Here's a famous Burke story I just have to tell. And I hope that I'll be able to tell it well. I sort of sketched it out. And my mom was a great straight man, and any comedic duo, particularly with my dad. There was always some kind of something going on of mix-ups, of which she was always the straight man. You know, she was trying to get it right, and we could see that this was a completely absurd situation. For our old friends, as you recall, we had a double apartment on the top floor of one of the buildings across from Park Merced Tale in San Francisco. This was 2 apartments with the wall knocked out in the middle. And it claimed to be the 12th floor, but it was actually the 13th floor, and they thought it was unlucky, so they named the first floor the lobby. And of course, being on the highest point of the building, for kids, this is the invitation for everything. Like banana peels at the end of a string to see if you could touch the man's head and then get it back. And all kinds of things that we did out that balcony. We had some very dear friends. I have to reference to them today. John Childs was one of those kids that we grew up with, who was a devoted surfer and skateboarder during the day. And he did have a real job at night. He was the cleanup person at that time at a donut shop in Daly City, just a couple of miles from Park Merced Tale. On one Saturday night, John called up and said, "Hey, there are all these donuts here that I have been told to throw out, and they are perfectly good. Still in the case from this morning. I could bring the whole bag of them by if you want." And Nancy said, "Sure," and got off the phone. Well, she went to Mom and said that John was going to come by and drop off some donuts after work. Well, it was already getting a little late, and Mom wondered, what time would John come by? And Nancy said, "Oh, just after midnight, Mom." And Mother proceeded right into a long lecture about what is proper for a young man and what is proper for a young lady. And this was not proper at all. And she said, "But Mom, it's just John." But she said it was impossible for him to drop it by and for him to call at midnight. So we suggested leaving it outside the door of our 12th floor apartment and just ring the doorbell and he could run away and we'd have the donuts for tomorrow. And Mom continued that that is impossible and improper for us. And we kept coming back to what could be improper about John Childs. And she said, nope, she wouldn't allow it. So Nancy called the donut shop and said, "Listen, John, Mom thinks it's really improper for you to drop it by and give us any donuts at midnight, but we have a plan." And Nancy proceeded to tell John that sometime after midnight, he should pull up to the back side of the building under our window, and there, on a well-trimmed hedge, he will find a basket. Just put the donuts in the basket, and no rules will have been broken. So we waited. Sometime just before 12 midnight, our anticipation of those donuts on Saturday took the best of us, and together Nancy and I pushed up the window on the top floor, stuck our heads way out, and eyeballed the drop to the hedge. We attached twine to a handle of a basket and started to drop it down, both of us leaning way out and watching the basket descend floor after floor. And it started to bounce against the building, which we didn't anticipate as it went down, and it hit a couple of windows. But we let the twine out faster and faster, thinking nobody would guess. And just as we were leaning way out and looking down at the hedge, Mom walked into the bedroom. "What are you doing now?" "Nothing, Mom." And she says, "Nancy, I forbade you to do that." And she turned around and walked out of the room. And Nancy pointed to me and she said, "But she didn't forbid you." And so she gives me the basket, and so we pulled the basket all the way back up, getting a wider and wider angle, and now it was hitting every window as we drew it up 12 stories. And of course there was nothing we could do. We had to get it back. And the lights of each floor were beginning to go on as the basket went up. And people were sticking their heads out wondering who's knocking on the window, like on the 5th floor, or how about the 9th, 10th, or 11th floor. Nancy stuffed the basket in my arm and pushed me into the back bathroom, and I dropped the basket one more time down 13 floors. Mom seems to have gone to bed, and Nancy and I are now in the bathroom together, waiting for John. John rode a big motorcycle in those days. I think it was a Honda 750. So John closed up the donut shop in Daly City and took off. He proceeded down Lake Merced Boulevard, where he stopped to pick up a hitchhiker. We didn't anticipate that. We started to hear John's motorcycle approaching, and we saw the single headlight coming up the street. John had told the hitchhiker that he needed to drop something off on the way home, and stopped at the hedge at the back of our building, giving the hitchhiker a long white bag, and told him that on the bushes over there you will find a basket, and put the long white bag in the basket on the bushes. From above, we could see that there were two guys on the motorcycle, but we could also see approaching from both ends of the street the Park Merced private police cars, turning up their headlights now on the suspected villains. We got scared. We slammed the window shut in terror, and now knew that the cord broke and fell to the bottom of the building. The cops got out of their cars and surrounded John and his hitchhiker, and they demanded to know, "What is in the basket, boy?" As we know, John always spoke very politely, and he said, "Doughnuts, sir," and the hitchhiker was in panic, thinking he was now part of a heist. John opened the bag and started eating a donut to show the cops that there were truly only donuts in the bag. Nevertheless, they were cited, and John was called into court. We are not certain as to whatever happened to the hitchhiker, and in court, apparently, the judge agreed with my mom and scolded John. To this day, we do not know who ate the evidence, but we suspect it was those two Park Merced police guards. We had a lot of fun, and we will miss our mom.